Julie Johnston, who's going to speak about greening the heart of education. Ultimately, it's all education, is it not? So
That's slide number 2.
is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I am going to share my slides.
Sure thing.
I'm a teacher, so of course I have slides to share. Hold on one second here.
Do you want to introduce her after she's ready to go?
No, she's gone. She's ready to go.
There we go.
And yeah, take it away, Julie.
Okay. There we go. So that's clear to everyone. Is that right? Can you see that? Yeah, great. Okay, so I want to talk to you today about greening the heart of education. And I added in a subtitle especially for the vegan cop, and that is that green schools are compassionate places for learning. And frankly, I don't want my young grandchildren going to a school that isn't a compassionate place to learn. So that's basically why I do this work. I'll tell you quickly, I have a BA in French. I used to be a French teacher, and then that morphed into outdoor and experiential ed, which morphed into environmental ed and sustainability learning. My master's in adult education was in sustainable learning as enticement to environmental action. I was the first coordinator of environment and sustainability programs at Upper Canada College's Green School program in Toronto. And I am currently an associate faculty member at Royal Roads University here in Victoria, British Columbia. And I'm also an associate with the Climate Emergency Institute, and I trained with Al Gore to become a climate reality leader. The reason I talk about greening the heart of education is, well, actually, no, the reason I have a little company, it's a not-for-profit company called Green Heart Education, is because I believe in greening the heart of education. One came before the other. And I work with educators around the world on greening the heart of their schools, their classrooms, their curricula, and their school communities. So this is what I was mentioning, Dr. Rao. All education is environmental education, according to David Orr. By what is included or excluded, we teach students that they are part of or apart from the natural world. And I think the whole point of everything we do right now has to be about protecting the future, safeguarding the future for young people. We're now, we have a situation where young people can recognize, research shows, more than 1,000 corporate logos, but fewer than 10 plants that are native to their region. And to me, that's absolutely tragic. And I remember my grade 3 teacher taking us out in the springtime, and we all had to learn 3 birds and 3 trees and things like that. So there's no reason why we can't bring natural history back to the schools. Oh, there's always one. There we go. Okay. So it's our choice. And I know that sometimes adults who aren't involved with education, they say, you know, why should I be interested in education? We were all kids at one point. We all were educated somehow or other, whether you were homeschooled or went to a public school or a private school. And right now we all as adults have some say in the education that goes on in our societies, because school trustees are supposed to be listening to what we say to them. So do we want to create a world that will lead to mutually assured destruction that destroys everyone and everything? And that's not just nuclear war, which is only a threat until somebody decides to press the button, but also the climate emergency and the biological crisis, et cetera, et cetera. Or do we want to choose mutually assured survival, which safeguards everyone and everything? It's that choice is up to us. So green-hearted teaching is teaching in service to all life, and it means teaching in a way that helps our students create their best possible future as part of the web of life on this precious planet, and doing that with what we're bequeathing them, which is kind of a web of life that is increasingly in tatters. So green-hearted teaching is teaching in service to all life and not just the economy, right? So many people think, well, kids have to learn what they need for their job. No, it's not just about the economy. It's about life itself. So Yeah, we really are bequeathing the children something that's going to make their future difficult for them. So it's asking, we're teaching reading and writing and math, etc., in service to what and in service to whom? If we don't consciously choose to educate for development that is sustainable, or Dennis Meadows from Limits to Growth, he now says development that is survivable, we are by default educating for unsustainability. So we have to think about that. We have to deliberately ensure that our schools are teaching our children for survival and for sustainability of survivability. So how can we know the why, right? We all know that we're in an existential crisis, but how can we green the heart of education? So what it means through my Green Heart Education lens is implementing education for sustainability in deeply transformative ways. And that, I believe, can be accomplished through a simple yet profound shift in our educational focus. So just sort of a, kind of a paradigm shift. I also like to ask, how might the life work of educators be different if a sustainable future and a livable future, as the IPCC or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change calls it, for all young people was the purpose of our jobs as educators? So I'm going to show you how we can green the heart of education. Also, how can we connect our schools and our classrooms, our school communities, and especially our curricula with the rest of nature in ways that will green the hearts of our students. And I'll show you a green curriculum map that I've developed and that I share with teachers around the world, and we'll walk through that together. I think it can create a simple but urgent transformation that will allow us to show students the courage and the compassion that they need from us. Teachers don't go into teaching in order to be heroes. Like, people become firefighters if they want to become heroes. But it's now time for educators of all ilks to step up, to become heroes for the sake of the children and their future. So again, how can we connect our classrooms, our school communities, and our curricula with the rest of nature? So this is the design that we used at Upper Canada College, where we focused on 3 different things here: facilities and operations, which frankly is the easiest because schools and school districts and school boards will discover they can save money by greening their facilities and greening their operations. So that one's always easy. Greening organizational behavior and attitudes is the next easiest, because the Parent Advisory Council or the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, might get involved. They might make it fun. Curriculum and professional development, that's the toughest, is getting teachers to, in some cases, in some school districts or jurisdictions, go out on a limb to teach what they know needs to be taught instead of teaching what the school district tells them to teach. So let's move to greening the school facilities. Anton Chekhov said, "In nature, a repulsive caterpillar turns into a lovely butterfly. But with human beings, it's the other way around. We send a lovely butterfly to school and it turns into a repulsive caterpillar." That's a kind of heavy, but in many ways, that's what we do. So in terms of greening our schools, which metaphor and which reality do we want to promote? Do we like the idea of schools as prisons? Because schools and prisons and factories were all invented around the same time. So be thinking, how did your school connect you with the rest of nature? Do we want schools as wastelands? Or do we want schools as fertile gardens? Because schools, even the indoors, can be places that are filled with our neighbors and our friends from the natural world. So greening our schoolyards can be school gardening, so a greenhouse. My students and I fundraised and then built a little greenhouse together. You can have a fruit tree orchard, although I've heard that some school districts forbid fruit trees because the fruit is used as weapons, which is one of the saddest things I've ever heard. Schools can be creating rainwater collection, doing composting programs. They can create an outdoor classroom, so the schoolyard becomes the classroom and nature becomes the teacher. We can also green our classrooms. So schools that classrooms that disconnect our students, right? I mean, they're sterile, they're ugly. Not here. Every once in a while it wants to not move for me. Well, you can imagine what the other pictures are going to be like, can't you? But let me see how I can do this. Hold on. I am going to stop my share and come back to it. Because, there we go. See if that works. There we go. There it is. Greening our classrooms means bringing the wild, bringing the rest of nature inside. Or we can blur the lines by taking the classroom outdoors more often. So if you have lots of parents who can be chaperones, and you have sort of a blanket legal form, all signed by parents at the beginning of the year, then you can definitely take your kids outside, your students outside more often. In the bottom left, I should mention my class. The first time I met with my class, I said, what do you love? What do you want to learn about? And one kid yelled out, pizza. And so we ended up growing a pizza garden. And we grew our wheat from scratch. And that is the students with their little kindergarten scissors harvesting our wheat. And then we made pizza literally from scratching in the earth and planting the seeds. That's the outdoor classroom we built just before the kids got to get in there and start playing around, and the teachers got in there using it. Okay, so let's talk now a little bit about greening school community behavior. So there are lots of stakeholders for any school. So certainly your neighbors in your community, the neighborhood that your school is in, the whole finance part of it at the board level, or the PAC, the PTA with fundraising, your purchasing and your suppliers. You can be looking for suppliers who are greener. Facilities and operations, maintenance and ground crews, custodians, support staff, admin, parents, teachers, and assistants, certainly your students. And then every school should have a green team of sorts. So green schools should be using safe cleaning products. We would think that that's a no-brainer at this point, but it isn't. Sustainable paper products, while also cutting down on the use of paper. We should always be using recycled paper. Every school should be an idle-free zone. Car exhaust contains neurotoxins. So the parents waiting outside the school are actually making their children stupider while sitting there running their cars. Our schoolyard should be pesticide-free. Green schools can promote and teach about zero carbon, non-combustion, perpetual energy, solar panels on the roofs, maybe a mini wind turbine. The burning age is over, or it ought to be over, right? No more fossil fuel burning. Green schools encourage sustainable transportation. There's more and more school districts going with electric school buses. And scary enough, a lot of schools still don't have a strong recycling program. And so just getting kids to practice the 3 R's, because that's something that kids of any age can understand, they can do, they can be responsible for. So not just reduce, reuse, recycle, but also rethinking, refusing, and repairing. And I know more and more teachers are figuring out ways to teach without using reams and reams of paper all the time. This one, oh my gosh, green schools really ought to be serving healthy vegan meals, because, folks, no one ever died from not eating meat in a school cafeteria during their lunch hour. And also, if they're eating junk like this in the school cafeteria at lunchtime, how can we expect them to learn in the afternoons? There's no live food there. They could be eating like this. And there's also no reason that kids should be eating on styrofoam, that kids need to be eating on paper. There's just no reason for it. Kids need to learn that better personal health is also better planetary health. And so lunch menus for vegan schools, that the average family only has 9 favorite meals, and many of those can be veganized quite easily. I discovered that school cafeterias usually only have a 2-week rotation. And so the hamburgers with French fries comes around within another 2 weeks. So they can be serving chili con carne, stuffed peppers, black beans on rice or quinoa, pasta, a Sunday roast with potatoes, onions, garlics, carrots, beets, broccoli, right? Ratatouille, pierogies, Asian noodles, veggie burgers, stir fry, Greek salad, mashed potato pie, curried vegetables. So that's already more than a 2-week rotation for the lunch cafeteria in the schools. And then there's a special events at schools. And what do we serve? We serve pizza with pepperoni and we serve hot dogs, both of which are carcinogenic. Why are we serving children carcinogenic foods in our schools? It's absolutely insane. So hot dogs can be veggie dogs or they can be roasted carrot dogs. Pizza can be vegan cheese pizza or pizza that the kids make themselves by putting all sorts of veggies and maybe fruit toppings on. Chinese food can be veggie spring rolls and vegetable chop suey with bits of marinated tofu over noodles or rice. Lasagna can be vegetable lasagna or a vegan cheese lasagna. Mexican can be bean burritos. Anyway, you get the hint here. There's so many different ways that we can be serving vegan meals to students in our schools. I did want to point out that if you have a school garden, it's really fun to have, and even if you're not an educator, you could be promoting school gardens in your local school and you can be helping out with the school garden. Excuse me. You can have a school garden harvest potluck every autumn where if you've organized your school garden so that every class has their own bed, what they plant before the school year ends, they can harvest in September and then serve to the whole school. And these are my students making a big, huge bowl of rainbow coleslaw from the different veggies that we had grown in our garden plot that year. There are lots of other ways that school communities can go green. So walking school buses, celebrating in green ways, having a sustainability rep on student councils or parent councils, plants in every classroom. I worked in a school once where I said, hey, we need to get plants into the classrooms. And the principal said, well, what if they die? And I said, well, that's no. First, he said, who will take care of them? I said, well, the students. And then he said, what if they die? I said, that's the circle of life. Like, there's nothing wrong with a plant dying, although we would prefer the kids to learn how to take care of them. What else haven't we talked about yet? Litterless lunches. Like, we just should not allow any garbage coming to school in a school lunch remaining at the school. If parents want to send those horrible things in plastic, let them deal with the garbage. Using daylight in our classrooms or automated sensors, wearing sweaters in school. Kids don't work well when it's really hot in a classroom. Turning off computers at night and on weekends, practicing gratitude. You know, whenever we're together to say our grace together. It doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't even have to be spiritual. It can just be stating our gratitude. No bottled water, sheltered bike racks. There's so many different things that school communities can do. I did want to tell you about this. There was a letter on Green Heart Education, or it's called greenhearted.org, my website. I wrote a letter to Jamie Oliver, and I asked him if he would please make his sort of signature dish, which is a stir fry, a beef stir fry, I think. I asked him if he would make it a vegan stir fry. And it wasn't too long after I posted this that apparently he endorsed the vegan diet and said it's a no-brainer. A plant-based diet is the future for meat eaters. So ask, and sometimes ye shall receive. So we've talked about how we can connect our classrooms and our school communities. Now, how can we connect our curricula? Well, if children are to keep alive their inborn sense of wonder, this is from Rachel Carson, bless her, and I've updated the gender language. They need the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with them the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. Now, sometimes that can be the teacher. It doesn't have to be the parent or the aunt or uncle or the grandparent. Sometimes it can be the teacher who is that one adult who can help children sort of rediscover their innate biophilia, their innate love and connection with the rest of nature. So pointing out the genuine, authentic connections between the existing curriculum and education for sustainability and climate change education, I believe will take compassion, courage, curiosity, and independent thinking on our part as as the adults. And a lot of group thinking amongst like-minded and like-hearted parents, colleagues, administrators, students, and other school community members. So here's that green school curriculum map that I mentioned already. It looks like this. So it's a big idea for each developmental level. So instead of saying to teachers, you got to teach it all in every grade, no. From K to 3, green school teachers just have to focus on nature connecting. So you can imagine that that can look like so many different things, right? And then after kids, you know, when they're no longer children, when they're tying their own shoes and they're into reading textbooks and things like that, but they're not quite grown up yet. That's when we would teach them about ecological principles, because that's when they're curious about how the world works. And then once kids develop to the level where they don't play in the schoolyard anymore, they sit around or they stand around and talk with each other, that's when we could be presenting environmental solutions. Well, actually, we could present the problems, and the kids, with that energy that they have at that age of grade 6, 7, or about 12 years old, they would come up with environmental solutions. And the closer they are to home, to their own communities, perhaps their own families, and the school itself, then the more agency the kids feel. And then for the senior grades, teaching them everything there is to know about sustainable development. So this is the kind of the backdrop. So the foundation for this green school curriculum model is compassion, respect, and the ethics of sustainability. So we're not just going to be teaching them, you know, green stuff. No, we're going to be developing in our schools a foundation of compassion, respect, and ethics. Now, the umbrella of this green school curriculum model needs to be the global climate and oceans emergency, the biodiversity crisis, the sixth mass extinction, because really everything we do now is under, I don't want to say under that black cloud, but under that umbrella, right? Everything we do has to make sure we're not making the climate less safe for our children's future. Rajendra Pachauri used to be chair of the IPCC, and he said we are risking the ability of the human race to survive. And current UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says climate change is an existential threat to most life on the planet, including and especially humankind. So we really, even though we're possibly not even teaching climate change to our kids, we need to make that the umbrella for our curriculum. The backdrop of sorts. So what we're going to teach against is environmental and ecosystem health. So we're going to not be doing things as schools and as educators and as students that make the world a dirtier place, a more polluted place, a less safe place to live. So then let's walk through each of these fairly quickly. So in the preschool and primary grades, it's all about nature connecting and nature bonding. So we're healing our culture's disconnection and alienation from the rest of nature. That's what we're helping the kids to do. And it could be through reading, it could be through physical education, it could be through little science classes with the younger kids. It could be through any curricular area that we do this. You might know Richard Louv, who wrote Last Child in the Woods. He wrote, the children and nature movement is fueled by this fundamental idea. The child in nature is an endangered species, and the health of children and the health of the earth are inseparable. Reconnection to the natural world is fundamental to human health, well-being, spirit, and survival. I love that. So helping young children reconnect with the rest of nature is a no-brainer. So contact with nature is as important to children as good nutrition and adequate sleep. Time spent outdoors correlates with increased physical activity and fitness in children. Exposure to green spaces reduces crime and increases individuals' well-being and ability to focus. So you know, the outdoor activities in natural settings can significantly reduce symptoms of ADHD. We have an epidemic of ADHD right now, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That H part is it seems to be getting more and more common. And of course, if we sit kids in classrooms, sterile, ugly classrooms for 5 or 6 hours a day, of course they're going to react. Now, that's not the only reason for ADHD. Apparently, pollution is having an effect on kids, et cetera, et cetera. Their nutrition levels, things like that. But if we let all of our children play more outside, it's going to do wonders for children who struggle with ADHD. Outdoor education with a focus on environmental learning also increases academic achievement, and that's been well researched now. Research shows, and actually this was my research, my name there. Research shows that our culture's disconnection and resulting alienation from nature is a root cause of our environmental problems. So if we raise a generation of children who aren't disconnected from the rest of nature, then that's going to make dealing with the rest of our environmental problems, and probably a lot of social and economic problems too, much easier. Educators can honor the importance of time spent in nature throughout the grades. Outdoor classroom, bringing nature into the classroom, field studies, natural history, walkabouts, nature journaling. There's lots of different ways we can do this. They can help children see that outside isn't just a place for recess and playing sports. It's actually what sustains us. A lot of kids don't know that food actually doesn't start in the grocery store. You know, they don't understand about growing food and growing food in gardens and growing food on farms. I remember Jamie Oliver had a show once where he went into a classroom with all sorts of fruits and vegetables. And the kids didn't know, for example, that French fries come from potatoes that look like this, you know. It was pretty scary. He showed an eggplant and one of the kids said, "Is that a pear?" Because he knew the pear shape, but he had never seen a pear. Educators can recognize the gift to the human spirit of learning to be comfortable within the natural world, of acquiring a sense of place, a feeling at home in the natural world. It's so, it's just so lovely, you know, to feel like that's your home out there, not a place that you have to travel through to get from this building, the school building, back to your home building and your computer screen. We allude to a sensory narrowing. This is fascinating to me. During screen time, in that the visual and auditory senses are stimulated, whereas other sensory motor modalities may be neglected, such as proprioception, active motor control, our sense of smell, our sense of taste, and our sense of movement. So what they've discovered is that, and what I've actually witnessed taking young children outside, is that a lot of them have never walked on uneven ground, and they feel very unsafe walking off the concrete path or walking off the asphalt. And that's because there's just so much screen time in their lives. So it's really important that kids get that time outdoors, just running around, playing, etc. Now, this is an important caveat. And I had someone who worked in Africa challenge me on this, saying, you know, the kids in Africa, they're not protected like this, like we say we need to do with our students. I say, well, that's not a good thing that we should bring here. That's a bad thing that needs to be fixed in Africa. But David Sobel, who's a very famous environmental educator, says no environmental tragedies before 4th grade. So it's around the age of 9 or 10 when kids develop a sense of agency. Before that, they don't have the agency to figure out how to solve these problems. So they need reassurance that we, the adults in their lives, are doing everything that we can do to solve the problems. And I'm of the mind that we should actually lie to children when they're this young. If they know enough that they're sad or they're scared about environmental tragedies, and we know that we're not doing all that we can do to help, you know, create solutions in the world, I think that's the one time I would suggest lying to children, because they need to know that the adults in the world are doing everything they can. This one makes me so sad. All I'm saying is I wished for an endless summer vacation, and now the glaciers are melting. Kids they don't know how to make the separation, and then they don't have the agency to know what to do. So we move on to the next developmental level. So these are 9 to 11-year-olds. And they're curious, they're energetic, they want to learn how life works on this very, very precious planet. And so Baba Dioum, a Senegalese forestry engineer, better known as a conservationist, says we will love and respect only what we understand. We will understand only what we are taught or allowed to experience. So it's a no-brainer to teach this to kids at this age, because the earth doesn't play a big role in conventional education. And that further disconnects students from nature, from the rest of nature. Everyone needs to understand how life works and how Mother Nature sustains them, right? And there is a continuum that we could be teaching, evolution, ecology, biodiversity, and then ecosystem services. And as this Montessori educator says, that serves as a superior way for students to make sense of the world and offers a powerful integrating theme in education. And Maria Montessori was totally into that. I never learned the carbon cycle in school. And so when I became interested in climate change, there was so much I had to learn, even the simple stuff, like the carbon cycle and the fact that there are kind of two carbon cycles. There's the short-term one and the long-term one, the fast one and the slow one. So here's that continuum, like the great story of evolution on life. And then that leads to how life works, the principles of ecology. And then that explains to kids the importance of biodiversity. And then we can talk to them about ecosystem services, or what I like to call with this age group, nature's gifts. What do we receive from the rest of nature? So I won't go through all this, but there are 7. It's suggested that we teach kids 7 ecological principles: how energy flows, how materials cycle on Earth, interrelationships, everything's connected, change and how things change over time, quickly or slowly, then diversity, community, and adaptation. You can imagine after 2 or 3 years of learning those things deeply, how ecologically literate those students will be. The importance of learning, the importance of biodiversity. We have to demonstrate the marvelous interwoven complexity that characterizes every ecosystem, and that this is a result of a co-evolutionary dance that has required millions upon millions of years. There's that word dance again, right? So this is such powerful learning, and we're just not teaching it very well right now. So here are nature's gifts, better known as ecosystem services. I think we're up to, is it $125 trillion a year? If you put a sort of a dollar value on these gifts that we receive from Mother Nature for free. So children can learn how Mother Nature protects the land and gives us lots of different genetic resources, and cycles the nutrients and purifies our air, et cetera, et cetera. They're all these gifts that we receive. And I can tell you, we're at number 11, pollination. There are places in southern China right now where they've sprayed so many pesticides in their orchards that all the pollinators are dead. And they have to use human beings with little paintbrushes to go around one at a time, pollinating. They've got little cups of pollen, pollinating each little blossom. And that costs them billions of dollars a year. So better that we protect the pollinators, the pollinating insects. Then we move up to, as I mentioned, those kids who just love to sit around and talk, right? You could probably pick, they're the ones who hang out on street corners during the summer. We can put the passion and energy and creativity of these young people to work in coming up with solutions. Jane Goodall says you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. And what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And students at this age start to really feel that. And man, do they love Jane Goodall. If you ever have the chance to go to a Jane Goodall talk, There will be so many young people in the audience because of her Roots and Shoots program. So again, this is a no-brainer. We and all future generations have one heck of a problem, and we, students and their teachers and parents, can help to solve these problems. So early teens love working together. They have the patience, they have that sense of agency for problem solving. So at the very least, we can look for ways to incorporate a solutions-focused worldview into their course material. And schools can and should be modeling and teaching ecological ethics throughout these grades. So in the senior grades, before they graduate, students can be learning the principles and processes of sustainable development so that they graduate as sustainable development practitioners. They can learn the history and the story of sustainable development, its potential and its promise as a transformative paradigm shift, really. You've heard of the Sustainable Development Goals now. But before they came along, there were all these principles that came out of the Rio Earth Summit back in 1992. And I find that we can talk all we want about sustainable development and sustainable development goals, but if we don't understand what the principles of sustainable development are, we kind of don't know how to do it. We don't know how to reach those goals. So this is really, really important. Again, the no-brainer. If our schools and other educational institutions aren't teaching for sustainable or survivable development, as I mentioned, then by default, we're teaching for unsustainable and unsurvivable development. We really need to hold on to that concept. SD is the best ethical way of doing business, so not business as usual, which is destroying ecosystems around the world. It can be applied to all aspects of a school, as well as graduates' lives and their careers. It can be a discussion and planning framework for decision-making and deciding on new actions and initiatives. And even I've worked with grade 3 students, teaching them a little bit about sustainable development, and they grasp it faster than anyone else that I've ever met because grade 3 students are all about fairness. So any of you who have 8, 9-year-old kids at home or grandchildren, you know that this age group, they're all about fairness. And so they realize they just have to ask 3 questions. Is it fair? Is this initiative that we're talking about? Is it fair to the rest of nature? Is it fair to all the people involved? And is it a fair price for everyone? A better, more potentially transformative solution has not been found yet. There are other things that we can bring into it, like donut economics and things like that. But those things fit into this potentially transformative solution of sustainable development. I say potentially because we really haven't given it a good shot yet. And these are the 11 different principles that I teach to my students when I teach. I'll just let you have a quick look. There's some that are the hows, some that are economic. So if we understand those, internalize those, and then use those when we're making decisions. There should be one here. It kind of plays out in Principle 5, but I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Raffi, the children's singer. He has created a new paradigm called child honoring. And I think that's almost the short form for all of these. If we wrapped all of these up into one phrase, it would be child honoring. If we put children at the center of every decision we ever make, if we put their welfare, their well-being, and their future at the center of every decision we ever make, then the world would be a much better place. Sometimes teachers say, I can't teach any of this stuff. It's considered controversial. I'm like, whoa. So life is controversial, is it? There's one biased belief that I believe all children and youth should be indoctrinated with, like literally indoctrinated with. And that is that life is the most important thing we all have, right? We have to put life ahead of money. We have to put life ahead of the economy. So I just want to quickly touch on, these are some more tools for transformation. So we've talked about ethics and early experiences in the natural world, and life is a great story. etc. here. But we can also be teaching math and economics later on through an environmental lens or a sustainability lens. We can be teaching ecologically inclusive scientific literacy. We can be teaching history through an environmental lens, because usually history is only human history. And we can also be teaching nature-friendly language and metaphors. So I don't know if there are any questions, but I'm going to pop through a couple of these because I want to show you this one. We still use this expression, killing two birds with one stone. What I like to say is feeding two birds from one hand, although I have heard feeding two birds with one scone, which is cute. But so many of our metaphors and our language choices are violent, they're militaristic, they're anti-nature, or they're devoid of nature, or they're mechanistic, right? And on the other hand, we can choose peace-promoting metaphors and language. Ones that are respectful of the rest of nature, ones that are organic and natural. So we're not talking about the brain as a as a computer. We're talking about the brain as a garden, right? So which would you rather have? I'd rather have my brain be considered a garden, and so much of what we do, of what teachers and what educators do, is prepare the soil for the seeds that will grow in a child's brain, child's mind. I think that the most important curriculum today is teaching students how to grow their own food in a changing climate. And there's lots of science here that, that this can be about. It also helps them over the years learn about climate change without us having to, get into that controversial topic. And we have to urgently teach food growing and food growing skills and habits of head and heart and hands. And that's because we can't grow food overnight, but nor can we learn to grow food overnight. Right? Jason Wellman says, through one simple little act, we can cultivate a world that is more diverse, unified, and collaborative, and less divided and lonely. So ultimately, a world more joyous and sustainable than this one through one simple act, and that is gardening. So why not teach our kids how to grow their own food? So that's what I wanted to share with you. And that's my contact information. And if you want to get in touch, please do. And I would be very, very happy to hear your questions if you have any, or your comments.
Thank you for that, Julie. That was really inspiring. I mean, the theme of this convergence is there is a planet B. There is a different way in which we can organize ourselves and create a planet, because ultimately we create the world that we were educated to create.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you're pointing out that the children know 1,000 logos, but they don't know the trees in their neighborhood, that tells me that the purpose of education today is driven for the benefit of corporations.
Yes.
I say we're literally being factory farmed. All of us are being factory farmed and funneled into different, corners in this corporate world to go produce more, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I had another comment about you mentioned something about two cycles of carbon, the short cycle and the long cycle. I fundamentally disagree with that, because I say any CO2 molecule is the same as any other CO2 molecule. There is no caste system between them.
Yeah.
They just happen to be different sinks.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, where I use it and where it is helpful is with deniers. I work a lot with deniers. And if you say to them, we're digging carbon out of the ground, right? The sink, that safe sink that's been locked away safely for 250 million years. And we're burning it just like that. And then that CO2 is entering like the short-term carbon cycle, right? And where the sinks are becoming overwhelmed. So they seem to get it. It's like, okay, because they'll try and say, oh, you don't understand photosynthesis. And I'm like, I understand it just fine. Thank you. You have to
Yeah.
understand that the extra carbon that humans are adding right now is, sending the Earth's energy balance into imbalance, right? And
Right.
that's where, so I hear exactly what you're saying. And it's still, I think it's a useful, with some people, it's a very useful way to, to
Right.
separate it out and to explain it.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
just
for that.
disagree with the IPCC separating it out,
Yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
it's
I
all
hear
the
you.
same.
Yeah.
Tammy, are you not able to unmute?
Oh, there we go. I'm able to unmute. I'm not able to start my video, but that's okay.
Oh, why not?
It just says I'm unable.
Oh, there you are.
There we
I
go.
found it.
Thank you for your help. Hi, Julie. Thank
Hi,
you. So, the one thing out of many that I received from this convergence is one of the things Sailesh said, and we're all saying it, just one more thing, like just one more thing. And to me, that isn't just adding one more thing, but also releasing one thing so that there's room. What am I holding on to that doesn't serve? It's not the highest time for me to be doing this. So if a person wants to add in a really organic way, one more thing to be able to share your program. So I was just thinking when you were speaking about, I don't think I can take on a big project of a bunch of schools, but maybe I can just present it in my grandchildren's school. Just start there, one thing in their school.
Yeah.
You have the curriculum for people to go forward with that and be able to share it, or would you teach remotely? How would that work if a person?
I do virtual professional development workshops with teachers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be fun, actually.
Okay.
I really enjoy doing that.
And what other things would you be offering? Would it be other programs other than in the school system?
I work with individual teachers who are lonely. What I've discovered is that there's, in every school, there's usually one, maybe two, and they find each other, but there's usually just one who's interested in this kind of thing. And so in that sense, I've worked with teachers who are just lonely as the greenies in their school. And so I provide moral support in that sense, and also suggestions, and the kind of the idea of this one thing. What simple thing can they take on outside of their classroom, because they're kind of in control in the classroom. A lot of teachers tell me that they work in school districts where they're told on this day you teach that curriculum. I think in Canada, we can't imagine that, because we just have a lot of professional autonomy. There's a provincial curriculum here that we're supposed to cover, but what and when and how they teach it is up to teachers. But so that's the other thing I do. And I have a website that helps a lot of teachers. There's a lot of material on there that could help them. An English teacher, there's lots of stuff on there for integrating this kind of green heart stuff into the teaching of English, history, things like that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before I get to you, Sai, I wanted to ask you something, because when I visited the Sadhana forest in India, basically it's a community which is restoring the forest in that region. Okay, and so they have gotten together to do that, and there are some people who have been there for a long time, and they have children, and the children are educated in nature. No, there's no school. In nature, they are educating themselves. And then when they decide what they want to work on, what they want to specialize in, what they want to learn more about, they get online and they figure it out. So
That's right.
It's basically child-centered, self-directed education. That's what's happening there, in the heart of nature, in nature itself.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful. Yeah. And when you think about it, for 250,000 years, that's what education looked like.
right, yeah.
Right.
Until we got industrialized, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
funneled into cities and, into factories and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Sai?
Hi. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I came across a few parents nowadays who they themselves are vegetarian, but they want their kids to be non-vegetarian from the beginning, so that uh, they feel like they should get used to everything as they grow up, and they should eat everything. They should get used to everything because they should not face any social pressure and all that. So how would you tackle such kind of parents, number one? And if there are some parents which do want their kids to raise their kids as vegan, but in school they might, the kids themselves might be mocked by other kids around. So how can you empower kids? Because kids, again, you can tell many things to adults, they might listen, but how can you empower kids? It can be really challenging for kids.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I worked my last job as a teacher, like an elementary school teacher. I was there for 10 years, and I was in a really special program, which sounded a lot like the one that Dr. Rao just described. And so I got to watch these kids grow up. I had some of them for 10 years. And there's a handful of them that were raised vegan, at least veg, if not vegan. And I saw them go in different ways. I remember one young man, he couldn't handle the peer pressure. And so his parents said, "Sweetie, you do what you need to do. If you want to taste those things, then taste those things." And I think they gave them kind of an age, though. I think they said when you're 12 or something like that. Like, it wasn't when they're little, because the peer pressure happens at a certain age, right? But others of those kids just they were already just strong in themselves, and they just ignored it. So I think the most important part is that there are parents involved with the school activities who can say, my kids aren't eating carcinogenic hot dogs, so please buy veggie dogs, which are, they're not fabulous either, but at least they're not carcinogenic. And sorry, are we all vegan here? Like, it's not very often I'm with vegans and I can express my disgust about hot dogs and stuff like that. But parents definitely have to advocate for their kids, so that, if there's a bake sale, then those parents, maybe with the few other vegan parents in the school, they have to provide vegan baked goods for the bake sale, right? There are only a handful of schools in North America, for example, that are vegan. The New York City School District, whatever the title of it is, they, I think, are vegan. Is it plant forward? No, I think they have to offer vegan option with every meal. So there are big steps forward, right? And when there are more options, then the kids are going to be teased less and less. So sometimes it is the parents have to, and the grandparents can be advocating, aunts and uncles too, right? We don't all have our own kids, can be advocating to the school trustees. And more people get it. Like Jamie Oliver said, it's a no-brainer now. This is the way the world is going for numerous reasons. And you need to, in the same way that we're becoming more open to children understanding if they're transgender, or children understanding if they have a different sexual orientation, or children of different religions have different diets. The vegan diet just needs to be honored by school districts and by schools and by PTAs and by teachers, in the classroom celebration. But the parents have to advocate, and they have to be talking to school trustees, because that's who's there to listen to the parents. And then it will come down this way, and then the parent teacher associations at the bottom, they will kind of take it upward, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Yeah. But there are different ways. I mean, parents have to know their children. You know how it is. Some kids, you say, you know, we don't eat meat and dairy products and eggs. The kids will just go, well, then I'm eating them. They'll hit a certain age where they just want to rebel, right? But if you say, you know, we would like you to wait until you're 12 years old and you understand what's going on. And then if you want to try different things, you can try different things. And some parents will just say, we're a vegan family. Full stop. End of story. We're a vegan family. We don't eat those things. So yeah, it's different for every family, I think. Thank you, Sai.
Thank you, Sai. Deepak?
Hi.
Hey, Joey. Thank you so much for that presentation. Beautiful. So my question is around social media and overall this digital addiction age we are in now. Like, you know, so much they get influenced so much through that. Even like what career to choose, like whether to be the cog in the corporate machine and or do a sustainability and advocacy related careers. So, what's been your experience in guiding students with that?
Well, I have to admit that a lot of my teaching time was spent in a small rural community, and it's been very different for them. They they want to go out into the world, but many of them have come back. So for all those reasons, all right, the world was not a happy place for them out in the world, and so I don't know. I think if you ground children at an early age and you talk to them about not just the nature connecting bonding thing, but about right and wrong, about needs versus wants. I think I wonder if parents have these big philosophical discussions with their kids anymore. I'm not sure that they do. I'm sure there must be some, right? All of the people here, I'm sure they're having these conversations. But um, what would be a better word than we have to arm our children? What's a more peaceful verb there? If anybody thinks of the right word, but we have to give these gifts to our children so that they have them when they go out into the world. We don't teach media literacy very well, right? We don't teach philosophy very well when they're young. We don't teach ethics very well when they're young. So if we teach more and more and more of those things in our family units and in our schools, then when they're faced with, they're faced with the pressure, the temptation, it just washes off them, right? It just will wash off them because they've got this center, this strong center. And I know I've often said to young girls, I've said, be your own cake. And then if somebody special comes into your life, they're your icing. But if they leave, then you still have your own cake, right? So it's almost like that. We have to help young people really develop a strong center, so that all the pushing and shoving from that world that you described it just washes off them. But I don't know if I answered your question, did I?
Yeah, I think it's really how the current education system is. Like, it's about making well-rounded individuals rather than let them discover their strengths. Like, you have to work on your weaknesses rather than your strengths.
Mm. Yeah. The indigenous way of education is to actually look for children's strengths and then to focus on them, to not make children feel like they're in deficit from day one. I've heard so many children say when they actually got a kind of a diagnosis of ADHD or Asperger's or dyslexia, they would say, "Oh, I'm so relieved. I thought I was just stupid."
Mm.
That's tragic, right? What, like someone with dyslexia is almost always creative. Why aren't we focusing on that child's creativity,
Right.
right? Because that's the gift that they're going to take out into the world, unless we squelch it by
Right.
making them think that they have this deficit of not being good at reading and writing, things like that. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about
yeah,
being useful to the corporate system.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it is.
yeah, yeah.
That's your wealth is your usefulness is measured by that,
That's right.
literally.
Yeah. Thank you, Deepak. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the word you were looking for, it could be empower instead of armament. And yeah, it's kind of this box life we live in, right? We live in a box, we drive in a box,
Right.
what's in that box. And I suppose this also puts us in a box, like how to think, how to be creative, and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
actually, I had a question. You mentioned something about fruits being treated as weapons. So that's kind of interesting. How would they consider fruits as weapons?
Oh, because at recess, the kids would pick them up and throw them at each other.
no, literally.
So they look, yeah, literally. And so they look at that, on that as weapons instead of teaching them to collect the fruit and turn it into jams and jellies and whatever, right? It's like, oh, come on. Don't turn what is a solution into a problem. Do it the other way around.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So Tammy, is it okay if we get one more question in with Amit?
Thank you so much.
Way, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Tammy. Go
I
ahead,
know we're
Amit.
over time. Yeah.
Oh,
There we go.
Thank you very much. I was with you before your first slide started. You said, of course, I have a slideshow. I'm a teacher from there until the last slide. And I was also kind of checking off the list because being a parent, okay, my daughter's school has this. Yes, this. Yes, this. They have a community garden. Yes, they have planted broccoli, potatoes, and everything in the community garden. And they're going to
Yeah.
make a soup after the school resumes. So
Oh,
I was
God.
kind of getting a checkbox. The only thing left is the dairy has like penetrated all the schools here in UK, and they just provide little
Yeah.
what do you call Tetra packs.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating to see that. I mean, whenever I go to my daughter's school and then I see some children, they carry it and sipping out at home, and those are also packaged like here the brand is Muller's, so it has a cow texture packaging just to attract and lure the little children's. And my daughter says, why do they still drink? I get into conversation, but my daughter is 7 years old and the younger one is 4 years old. So the 4-year-old at her nursery school, they used to give her the same vegan brand which we have at home. But the elder one, the principal blatantly said, no, sorry, we don't have any
Oh.
vegan options for them yet. But they
So it's
do
time
have,
to time to talk to the trustees.
probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The rest of the school is absolutely perfect, but I don't know. But it's about this, all the schools. I mean, they don't. Dairy is everywhere. I mean, dairy has penetrated.
Yeah.
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 Do you have any strategy to kind of tackle?
It's a toughie. It's such an issue in the United States, I know. I don't know what to say unless you can, like, are there any other vegan parents that you can talk to?
No.
No,
In fact,
okay.
during the Halloween, I asked the parents community so that we can promote a green Halloween. We asked the student, I mean, children, we if they come to our doors, we give them grapes or fruits and all. They said it is too extreme. They do it only for the sweets and toffees. And how can we ask them to collect fruits?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
talking to
especially,
them about, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know, when I was young, someone put razor blades in apples and then gave apples away. And so that's where that whole we don't do fruit has come from. We do packaged candy because that's supposed to be safer.
I see.
And Yeah, and I think it only happened once, but it just created this mythology of we don't do fruit, we don't do apples because people put razor blades in. It's terrible, terrible
Right.
history. I honestly think that you need to find a sympathetic school board trustee. Of course, I don't know the term that you use in the UK, but there are elected officials, right? Who sort of are on top of they're above the school board administration
Right.
itself. You need to find one sympathetic one, and it might be someone whose child has allergies, for example, because people whose children have allergies understand they understand that there are going to be children who can't drink milk, right?
Yeah, that's
Things
a
like
good
that.
one.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, for example, like why are they serving only milk when lots of children are lactose intolerant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tons of children.
I was going to
Yeah.
suggest that to you, Amit, because I can
Yeah.
send you the map from Encyclopedia Britannica of
Okay.
lactose intolerance, and it shows you that Indians are 60 to 80% lactose intolerant.
Lovely. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That also reminds me, the apple and blade also reminds me, the school took all the children for a play, and it was about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it was a pantomime. And I was one of the parent volunteers to walk the kids. And in the show, they asked the children to sing songs towards the end. And in that, Snow White's stepmother has poisoned the apple.
Mhm.
I think Dr. Rao, I told you about that.
Right.
So, and all the characters in the play, they are asking Snow White through a song, don't eat apple, you eat chicken nuggets, you eat McFlurry, you eat that.
Oh
And it was so
no.
crazy. Yes,
Oh.
I did take I did record it on camera, and they bring in a large screen, so the lyrics are displayed, and all the children are singing, Snow White, eat chicken nuggets, eat this, eat that,
Oh, that's
but don't
disgusting.
eat a poisoned apple,
It's
Snow White.
This is
Wow.
all corporate propaganda.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
you got to complain, okay? You got to take it. You
Yes,
got to find your trustee, and you got to
yeah,
complain.
I'll
That's
do that. I
terrible.
wrote to the pantomime as well.
Yeah.
I didn't probably go through. Yeah, thank you for empowering
Yeah.
us with your presentation today. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Amy. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank
folks,
you
for
so
having
much.
me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Julie. Yeah.
Okay.